he and Christina are off on a what sounds like a very nice vacation. So we hope they're having a good time. There's no mic today, so if you have trouble hearing me, wave or shout out, and I'll try and speak louder. Hopefully with a select crew here today, it won't be a problem. The Ethical Humanist Society of the Triangle is a humanist congregational community promoting the cultivation of ethical values founded on reason and science and inspired by the love of humanity. Anyone who needs to know more information about our community, including those who are joining us by Zoom, you can let me know or enter your email in the chat and we'll get information to you. We're a community here, and we also live within many larger communities. We take time now to share joys and concerns regarding members and friends of the society, as well as for those within the larger communities of which we are a part. And it was a rather eventful week, so I'm thinking maybe people have some joys and concerns. John?
Well, I have a concern. I come from a family of 5 children, and unexpectedly, I learned that last Monday that my youngest sister had died. She was 73, and every time we talked with her, she said her health was just fine. Well, it turns out for some years she'd been hiding from both her family and relative the fact that she actually was not well. She had congestive heart failure, she had liver disease, and we still don't know for sure why she passed away. She's survived by 3 sons. Her husband had died almost exactly a year before she did. So it was a sad thing for our family, but part of life.
Well, our condolences, John. For you in chat on the Zoom, John Holmgren just shared that his youngest sister had passed away this week. Are there any other joys or concerns? Vera?
It's nothing on that scale, but I found out that my spine surgery was not successful. I got the same pain and the same limitation, so I had a second surgery this time in June. As soon as possible.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite get what Vera was saying, but she expressed some concerns. Amy?
I have small joy, and that is our neighborhood had our 25th annual harvest feast yesterday. I was on the turkey team, and the turkeys turned out well. So we had a group inside and outside, windows open, fans going. It was, and we had an outdoor patio even, which was much appreciated by folks out there.
And for our remote guests, Amy was expressing joy at sharing a holiday meal with her community. Gretchen?
We had a small, relatively small gathering with my 2 nieces and their husbands, one little one, and their mother was in town visiting, who I haven't seen for a while. And Jay's son Christopher came from Raleigh, so we had some stir-fried duck and hot stickers, Chinese feast, and had a bonfire out on the deck for a little while, but people all left pretty early, and so I got to relax after a week's worth
Yeah. Gretchen shared that she had a wonderful meal with a gathering of some relatives. Maura?
Fred and I just came back from the beach. We had a really nice beach trip, so that was great. And the other joy is that we're doing a little bit of music stuff again. In fact, Todd Bishop came over with his wife, Beth, and another friend with his wife, and Fred and Todd and Rich went out and did jazz, so it was great.
Maura and her husband went to the beach this weekend. Yeah, good time.
I'm looking forward to seeing my grandchildren tomorrow. My son in 2 years.
Oh, good.
Big deal.
And Linda's looking forward to seeing her son for the holidays. Oh, we have some outside interference right now. Ralph? Very good.
Ralph is just about a mile and a half down that road, so he's not far from, but he has given up his car, so we'll need rides.
Yes, Ralph enjoyed lunch with Chris and Jane and looking forward to seeing his son. I had Dorothy over here.
I'm leaving Wednesday with my son and we're driving up to New York to have Thanksgiving with my older son. This is the first time they'll be hosting Thanksgiving, so I think they're really excited about doing it all. It's gonna be a very quick trip, but it'll be fun.
And Dorothy's looking forward to traveling to New York to see her son and his first attempt at hosting Thanksgiving.
Hey, I looked at the date up there, and 58 years ago, Kennedy was shot. Many things have happened since then.
Yeah.
It's gonna get really cold Monday night, so check for freeze.
Yeah. Michael was noting that this is the anniversary of John Kennedy's assassination. 58 years ago. That's hardly seems. Oh,
And check for freeze.
yeah, and it's getting cold out. And we're looking forward to going up to New Jersey to be with our kids. For over 40 years, we celebrated Thanksgiving with my husband's family. The gathering got to be about 15, 16 people when everybody was there, but with everything that's happened the last few years, it's been interrupted. And now I'm passing the torch off to my daughter. She's going to host. And the younger generation can take over for now, or the middle generation, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm having terrible trouble with names today. Gordon, I know all these people. I promise.
Well, the anniversary that was mentioned is tomorrow. That's also my anniversary. It's my 30,000th day in my experience. 30,000 days and 30,000 nights. Wow, tomorrow.
Wow.
Congratulations.
And that's Gordon telling us he's been with us for on this earth for 30,000 days. That's quite an anniversary. Okay. Anything else? It's time for opening words, and I believe John Holmgren is on the docket. Anyone else? Okay. I guess we will go on to the introduction of our speaker. Well, none other than our own Jay Niver, who is going to speak to us on end of life issues.
Yeah, it's on. I'm lucky to be the speaker because I get to remove this dreaded mask and be heard, which may or may not be a good thing. I'm a fill-in speaker today because our niece Katie was going to talk about the zoo, our wonderful zoo in Ashboro, and how good it is and what she does there, the great work she does with her job. But she didn't get it pre-approved. That's what happens when you work in a bureaucracy. So in order to make sure that I didn't run afoul of the same problem, I got my speech pre-approved by my boss. Gretchen says it's fine. And because I'm kind of a substitute teacher today, that kind of sets the bar low for me. So you can't expect a lot. By the same token, I remember when we were in school, how we treated substitute teachers. And I hope you'll not be so brutal in that regard. I spoke to this group 2 or 3 years ago about my work in the Right to Die movement. And there's been some significant changes and developments since then. And that's what I hope to do, is just kind of bring us up to speed on that and talk a little bit about what I've been doing with Dying Right North Carolina here on a local level. And we've got a couple things we've done in the last half a year and are working on that I want to share with you. The first thing I want to make clear, and some of this I tried not to, I'm not going to go over the basics of the Right to Die movement. I covered all that when I last spoke. But I've got one thing that I'm harping on these days, and that is the distinction between medical aid in dying, suicide, and euthanasia. Now, medical aid in dying, and that's the term we use now in the movement. We've kind of done away with the word assisted suicide, because no matter how you use it, suicide never has a positive connotation. And suicide, as we know, is people who want to die because they're depressed. Usually it's something that can be treatable or transient. And medical aid in dying is for people who are already dying. They have a terminal illness. And in every state or jurisdiction in America where medical aid in dying is available, you must be diagnosed with a terminal illness in order to receive lethal meds. So medical aid in dying is not suicide. Suicidal people want to die. Medical people who use aid in dying, they don't want to die. They want to live, but they don't have a choice. Now, the third term that gets misused all the time is euthanasia. And the distinction is, when you are euthanized, somebody is taking an active role to help you deliver yourself. And it's because you're either suffering or you're in terrible pain. It's pain and suffering that's important. Now, how does euthanasia get misused? Another term for euthanasia is the mercy killing. And in Kenley, North Carolina, a week or two ago, I believe, Gretchen, I think you remember that, was the dog that killed a young child. The child was 2 or 3 or something. And I knew, as sure as we are here today, that when I read down in the story, it said the dog will be euthanized. And I thought, you know, it's a terrible thing that pit bull or whatever breed it was did. And it probably deserves to be killed because it could kill some other child, but it was not in misery. It was not in pain, but they said it will be euthanized. And I get so upset when I hear that, because you see the animals there. These are some of the critters that routinely get euthanized when they're not suffering and they're not in pain. They just get in our way and it's uncomfortable for us. So we kill the gator or the bear or the big cat. And I say, let's just say that we killed them. We didn't put them out of their misery. We encroached on their natural habitat. And yet we go around saying like we did something good. It makes us feel better about it. So, oh, we put it out of its misery. Well, it wasn't in misery. Now, actual euthanasia is legal, where a physician or someone else trained can come in and administer the drugs that you need to die because you're terminally ill anyway. And there you see the list. In Canada, jumps out because it's our northern neighbor, and a lot of people think that we're very much like Canada. We're sister countries, and yet they are so forward thinking that they allow euthanasia. Now you can self-administer the drugs, as you must do here in America, but virtually everyone opts instead to have a medical professional come do it for them. And that's our northern neighbor. Colombia in South America, just in July, approved euthanasia. And Luxembourg, Netherlands, New Zealand, just earlier this month. And Spain did it this summer. And the interesting thing about Spain is it's so overwhelmingly Catholic. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, that the biggest opposition to medical aid in dying, let alone euthanasia, comes from the Catholic Church and other religions. Now, we do have, since I last spoke to you, another state that allows medical aid in dying here in America. That's New Mexico. It went into effect this summer. And you see the list of others. And I'm going to come back to reference this, that when you add together all the years, Oregon, of course, being the first, all the years where we have had medical aid in dying legally available to persons who are terminally ill and of sound mind, there's over 60 years of combined experience. And there's not been one example of abuse that we know of where somebody was put out of their misery or under the table they were killed because they were disabled or they wanted the money or whatever, or they were pressured by family. There's no cases of that, but we'll come back and see why that's important in a minute. This is Dying Right, North Carolina. The gentleman at the bottom there is Ed Tiryakian, lives in Hillsborough. He's the retired investment banker. And he started Dying Right, North Carolina 5 or 6 years ago with the sole purpose of trying to get legislation passed in the Tar Heel state that allows people of sound mind who are terminally ill to get the drugs they need to self-deliver or have an exit. Now I'm going to tell you the story about somebody else that Ed and I have just discovered in the last few months. Her name is Rachel Chapman, and I call her a North Carolina treasure. And her story is one that some of you may recall. She lives in Knightdale, and about 10 years ago, she gained national fame. Actually, it would have been 9 years ago when she got married from this photo. She gained fame as the wheelchair bride. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Okay. In 2010, she had a bachelorette party because she was going to marry this gentleman. And at her best friend's house, they had this party, and there's a swimming pool. And Rachel's best friend, horsing around, gave her a little push into the pool. And when she fell into the pool, she hit her head and became paralyzed from the waist down. And so the wedding had to be put off. And when she did get married, it made great news because it's a real heartrending story. Not only is she paralyzed from the waist down, she's technically a quadriplegic. Her left hand is permanently in like a 3/4 fist. She can't move the fingers. In her right hand, she has limited movement of like 2 to 3 fingers. She can't do this. And so she's learned to get by kind of doing this and everything. And we'll come back to her before in a little bit. Her name is Rachel Chapman, and she lives in Knightdale. Now, when right to die legislation is proposed, there are 3 groups that get up in arms and rant and rave that it shouldn't happen. First is religious groups like the Catholic Church. Second is right to life groups that equate an unborn fetus with you or me or somebody who's 70 or 80 who's dying of a terminal illness, and they jump in and say, no, we can't have this. And the third group that traditionally opposes right to die legislation is not dead yet. They're the most visible one. They call it themselves the resistance, you see. And they claim that medical aid in dying is some kind of conspiracy to do away with disabled people because they'll be taken advantage of. And I first discovered them in 2000 when we were showing the film about my dad in Boston at the World Federation of Right to Die Societies. And down the streets below, there was a group like this. They get a whole bunch of folks in wheelchairs and they get placards and they say, come on, our lives are meaningful. You can't put us in the crosshairs. You can't get rid of us just because we're disabled. Well, nobody wants to. And that's why that earlier slide said we've had 60 years of medical aid in dying, and there hasn't been a case of anybody being ushered to the grave because they were mistreated or abused. Let's come back to Rachel. You see the photo on the left, that's her surrogate. She couldn't have a baby. So she and her husband, I forget his name, I haven't met him. They had this surrogate, and then you see Rachel with her daughter there at the right. So this is a lady who is, like I said, a quadriplegic technically, and she is one of the most uplifting, spirited, independent, autonomous people that you'd ever want to meet. And she wanted to make a statement. Now I'm setting you up for this. She wanted to make a statement that said, look, I am disabled, but I can still be beautiful. And I can still be sexy. She did a photo shoot with a professional lingerie photography group in Raleigh, and she made sure that her ostomy was visible because it goes with her wherever she does. And this is a series of photos because some of us are kind of old, have weak hearts here. I only used one. I didn't take the most racy ones. But she said, what's to be ashamed of? And you can guess, if she got a lot of press as the wheelchair bride, boy, did she get the press because of this. And they were in her face. She was hounded online. And she said, yeah, I had to get used to that. And I don't know what this means, if anything, but almost all the negative comments that came in were from women, not men. Maybe we can understand that. But she made a heck of a statement about being disabled. And she said, look, I'm disabled. I can't go anywhere without this bag. I can't move my legs, barely my hands, but I can still be attractive. And why is this important? Because Rachel found out about Not Dead Yet. And she found out about Dying Right North Carolina, the group that Ed and I and some others work for to try to get legislation passed. And when she went to the website for Not Dead Yet and read some of the things she said that they say, she was furious. She said, they don't speak for me. I want this option. If I become terminally ill in 20 or 40 or 50 years, I want the option to maybe have some assistance in dying. And we said, Ed did, I just met her a couple, 3 weeks ago, said, would you be willing to put this on tape? She said, I sure will. And she said, if we ever get into Raleigh, we get hearings before the legislature, I'll come up and I'll testify. And Ed and I said, wow, this girl is a beautiful person. She can speak for disabled folks and say, wait, Not Dead Yet, you don't speak for me. I want this option, okay? And so we're setting up a video shoot with her to go talk to her and put her on camera, and we'll have her testimony on video, and we think we can get it online in probably Compassion and Choices, Death with Dignity National Center. We'll put it on our own website, and she may become a spokesman for the opposition. Now, I want to introduce you to somebody else, another maverick who you may, pardon? No, another spokesman who will speak for us. I think when I say us, the people who want this. His name is Dr. B.J. Miller. And he gave a TED Talk in 2015 that when I checked this morning has about 14,300,000 hits, views, okay? He's internationally known. And I wanted to interview him for the Final Exit Network, of which I do their magazine. And I had to wait about 6 or 8 weeks to get a time slot to interview him because he's so booked up and so busy. And he's got an interesting story that in a sense parallels Rachel's, but is different. He was also victimized by a youthful prank. Only in this case, no one pushed him into a pool. He did it himself. And you can't see there, but he lost both his legs beneath the knee and has 2 prostheses, and he lost his left arm right here, okay? And I wrote him up. There you can see the stump of his arm. This is the current issue of our magazine, and he's the lead story. And the reason I called it an advocate by accident, guess what BJ's youthful prank was? He was a sophomore at Princeton, and after a night of carousing with his buddies, there was a little trolley car. It's well known. It's called the Dinky in Princeton. And it runs, I forget, a short distance, maybe 50 or 60 miles from 2 places. And it was parked for the night. And at 4 a.m., after visiting a number of pubs and stuff, they went to this trolley, and BJ decided to crawl up to the top of the trolley, climb it like an obstacle course. Well, when he got up there, he had a watch on, and the overhead, the bar that would attach to the power source, it arched down to his watch, and he got 18,000 volts, and he got burned up pretty bad. It cost him both his legs. They thought he was going to die. It cost him his arm, you can see. And he has gone on to use that platform. He didn't plan it that way, but it's a great entree. When you walk in, and he does it in the TED Talk, he's been interviewed by Oprah. He's New York Times Magazine did a feature on him. He's been on Fresh Air with Terry Gross, NPR. He's been all over. And when he sits down and people look at him, that's the perfect entree. And he tells them. Now, he doesn't, I've listened to almost all his stuff. He rarely mentions the fact that he was 12 sheets to the wind. And he doesn't mention the fact that after this accident, he went back and successfully sued the transit company, 2 bars that were giving him booze, and the fraternity where I guess they started out. He glosses over that. But the point is, he's gone on to become a well-known, internationally known spokesman for how we deal with the end of life. And he had an interesting perspective, and does, because he almost died. And he went on to become a physician who specializes in palliative and hospice care. And that's why he has a unique view on how we die, how we go about it. And he's so critical of the American healthcare system. It's worth noting. And I'm going to mention this, Chris, or somebody, when we're done, I can give you or whoever handles it our mailings, the contact to look at his TED Talk and some other things. Okay, so let's see what. So I interviewed Dr. Miller, and I have him on record as saying, yeah, just because I can't lift a glass to my mouth, or because I can't swallow, or I can't move because I have ALS, that should not prevent me from having the option to die if I'm terminally ill. And Miller, just like Rachel Chapman, got over this shame about his disabilities. He started out wearing a cover over the stump of his arm. And he said at one point, and this is reflected in the New York Times article, he said, no, I'm going to take it off. And it's just a stump. And his prosthesis, he used to wear the little phony shoes and things to cover him up. And now he doesn't. And we've seen in sports, there was a runner, I think, for Canada or somewhere, that they claimed he had an extra advantage because he was using those springy legs. Yeah, the Blade Runner. Thank you, Chris. So he, like Rachel, said, no, I'm not going to hide anything. I'm not proud of these things, but I'm not going to be ashamed. And that's how we hope to counter that notion that disabled people are going to be taken advantage of and can't speak for themselves. Now, Ed and I discovered another gentleman named Don in Asheville. He originally was hoping to exit on this past St. Patrick's Day, not because he was celebrating St. Patrick's Day, but he got to know about Dying Right, North Carolina, and he said, Ed said, would you go on record and tell us a little bit about your experience and why you feel the way you do about the right to die? And he said, sure. We went out there, we made 2 trips out to Asheville, and it's a very kind of a amateurish video, but it's only 4 or 5 minutes. And we wanted to play that for legislators in Raleigh if we got a hearing on our bill. And we knew that Don would not be able to do it. So we recorded it. And here it is.
I used to be diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, oral cancer. The choices I had for treatment to me would ruin my life and me. First of all, my teeth were being removed in order to accommodate the surgery to the back of my mouth, would be the left side of my mouth over where my tongue. After the surgery would involve removing bone from my jaw and replacing it with bone from my wrist, which in turn would be replaced with bone from my lower leg. And then skin would be grafted onto my mouth from my wrist and replaced with skin from my leg. I would be hospitalized for quite some time. And I would also have very dry throat after that. And if the teeth that were not removed would rot because of the chemotherapy and the radiation that would go on for, I believe you said, 9 weeks, I realized that cancer is a fatal disease. But at least I knew that I would deteriorate more slowly. It wouldn't be an immediate situation where I'd have to be fed through my stomach. I had gone through this once before, and they had to shave my jawbone considerably to the point where, a month after my surgery, my jaw broke while I was biting into a tortilla chip. And then my mouth was wired shut for a month in order to heal. Right now, I'm on 11 different medications for pain, for nausea, and some others for other problems that I have. I don't want to live with the quality of life that faces me, which is dismal. I will end it. I see no reason to have a painful existence where I am not happy and I don't make other people happy, and I am a burden to my wife and to society as a whole. I think very strongly that any competent adult should be able to make that decision for his or herself. It shouldn't be intruded to by government. So it's about time for law to address this. And I realize it's difficult for a politician that when there's a litmus test among many politicians to claim some kind of religious belief in order to be elected. The common good should always take first place in politics. And there are many people in my situation that are going to die painfully because the government has not stepped up and done the right thing by a segment of its population. Making it legal and an option without having to do this in secret and place family members and friends and anyone willing to act humanely at the time that wishes to help you end your misery. I think
it's a disgrace that it's still that way in the 21st century in North Carolina, which claims to be a progressive state at this point. If I do choose to end my life, the priest will not give me the last rites, it would be jeopardized. But philosophically, I would like to talk because I believe in Christian values strongly. One thing I like about his Catholic doctrine is being able to follow one's conscience. Well, I had a chance to talk to the governor. I would urge him to sign some legislation that would help people that have incurable diseases that are confident enough to make the decision to end their lives when their lives become intolerable because of pain. And because of a situation where they become a burden to their family and they find no joy in it.
Ed and I, let me turn this off now. Ed and I have 2 or 3 other people who are in similar situations as Don. And we're hoping as we go on, keep trying to push this cause, we'll get a number of short testimonials from people who say, look, this makes sense for me, and I sure wish the law would let us do it and help here in North Carolina. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Oh my goodness, all right. And it might take me back to the beginning. Yeah. Now, what time have we got? How are we doing, Chris? Okay, so I got a little bit more. There is one other short video that I was not aware of. The biggest opposition from religious folks, and I was never knew how to answer them because I'm not a religious person myself. I'm no biblical scholar. I can spell the word Bible, and I think you capitalize it. But beyond that, I can't answer folks. But my organization, Final Exit Network, produced a short little video that talked about answering the religious objections. And it was put together and narrated by a pastor. He's one of our members and he's an ordained minister. So it carries a little bit of weight. And I want to share that one with you. And it's about the same as the other one. But the reason this is good is because if anybody ever tells you, no, this is not what God wants or what the Bible says, you'll be able to answer them. That music is a band I used to play with, so I didn't have to get rights to use it.
As you may know, organized religion is often the biggest opposition to the right to die. A common religious objection to the right to die is that it thwarts the will of God. Why doesn't calling 911 thwart the will of God? Or taking any kind of medication, whether it's prescriptions or aspirin or even vitamins? Or what about allowing any kind of medical procedure or technology to prolong life? Another common objection is that people believe the Bible speaks against suicide. That is simply not true. There are 6 references in the Christian Bible to someone taking their own life. A key point here is that in none of these references do the scriptures actually condemn the person for act. Listed at the bottom of this list is Judas, who hanged himself from a tree after betraying Jesus. Even in that scripture verse, there is no indication that anyone thought his actions were wrong. His death by suicide was simply reported as a fact. Probably the most common religious objection to the right to die is that it violates the sixth commandment. However, most people don't know that the most common translation is wrong. The original Hebrew does not say kill, it says murder. And the distinction is very important because murder is specifically defined as the deliberate taking of another's life with malice. It's important to look at each of those words because they're very carefully chosen. Taking implies an act of violence in and of itself. In modern English, we talk about give and take, but in the ancient Hebrew, there was no such understanding. Next, another's life. Well, obviously, if I'm ending my own life, there is not another person. And with malice. In any situation where a loved one of somebody who is suffering wants that suffering to end, there certainly is no malice. That motivation is only coming from a deep, profound love. So there is no taking, there is no another, and there is no malice. By that definition, the right to die, or death with dignity, or suicide, or even assisted suicide, do not violate the Sixth Commandment. Another common objection comes mostly from the Catholic Church. The notion of redemptive suffering is that suffering somehow makes us more like Christ. This comes from Pope John Paul II's interpretation of the line from Paul's second letter to the church at Corinth, in which he wrote, "When we are made to suffer, it is for our consolation and salvation." Well, what the church conveniently forgets is that Jesus himself asked for his suffering to end. From the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Well, crucifixion, we now know from history, typically takes several days. But instead of dying a slow, agonizing death, Jesus died in only 6 hours. Yes, Jesus suffered, but he was not made to linger in that suffering.
I should have brought some CDs to sell that have that song and others on them. I'm winding down here. I wanted to make that point. And it was starting to become clear when I last spoke that we have a long way to go, even though more states and countries are making arrangements for death with dignity. And the biggest one we have to deal with is dementia, because in every case in America, every place that you can have aid in dying, you have to be of sound mind when you request it. And we might be of sound mind right now when we try to fill out the most concrete advance directive. Said, when I don't know what day it is, when I can't recognize my family, when I babble and just talk about the color of the flowers, I want to go. But it doesn't work that way. You have to be all together when you go to the physician, and you have to be terminally diagnosed, and there are other safeguards. So we know how common dementia is becoming. And in this country, there's no way to deal with people who have dementia and are terminally ill and want to die. The other problem, number one there, is accessibility. Right now, about 1 in 5 persons in America lives in a place where technically you can get aid in dying. But guess what? Catholic and other religious hospitals, mostly Catholic healthcare systems control more than half of hospital facilities in America. And they forbid their staff and physicians from participating. And a lot of physicians don't know how it works, even in states that have medical aid in dying, or they're leery about it. And it can be a real problem. And most states require 2 physicians to give separate diagnoses of a terminal illness. And if you live in a rural place, like parts of North Carolina and many other states, it's hard enough to find one doctor, let alone go out and shop for another one. How far are you going to have to go? So accessibility is a real problem. The other problem is intractable suffering. In other words, you're not terminal. You don't have that 6-month bar that's set there. And some of the things that you might have are right there on that list. And you could live many months, many years with many of those things, and there's no relief for you. And that is where the other countries like Canada now, and where euthanasia is allowed, they will make exceptions. You don't have to have a 6-month window. And Final Exit Network, the group that I work with, they are the same. And what makes them different is that you need not be terminally ill. You have to pass muster with our medical evaluation committee, which has physicians. They'll look at your situation. But if you have something that is totally unbearable, that you cannot live with, and it's not going away, you might have 10 years to live, but we will come and help you. And what we do is we do not give you drugs. We cannot physically help you in any way. But you can apply, if you get approved by our medical evaluation committee, 2 exit guides are assigned to your case. We will meet with you in person, or we learn to do it by distance during the lockdown. We'll meet with you and instruct you just exactly how you can take your life using inert gas with completely legal means and equipment that is available. We use nitrogen now instead of helium. It used to be helium, and people would go out and buy the helium party balloon kits, which didn't always work because it's diluted a little bit. It's about 90% helium. In any case, we will even sit with you if you want a caring presence at the time. And as one little aside, then I'll let it go. I am also doing the blog for Final Exit Network now. And the reason is the gentleman you saw there, and this must not leave this room, Kevin Bradley, he and another gentleman, Tom Tuxell, a doctor, or no, it was Ted, I believe. They went to see a client in Minnesota, and they were only there a few minutes to educate and get started on the process when sheriff's deputies arrived. A number of them came into the house and seized a travel bag that Kevin had and a little knapsack that Ted had. And still no charges have been filed. That was in early May. But the legal team that was helping these gentlemen said, Kevin, you ought to lay low. And Kevin was doing the blog. So they said, Jay, why don't you take over the blog? So, okay, now I do it once a week and I moderate the comments and all that. But here's what's interesting about the Minnesota case. A few years ago, a similar situation happened, and we were found that we were violating Minnesota's law against assisting a suicide. And you know what we do? We talk. That's all. And the talk that we share, you can get it in Derek Humphrey's best-selling book, Final Exit. You can get it on a newsstand. But in Minnesota, it went all the way to that state Supreme Court, and they upheld a minor conviction. We got the 2 guys got a fine and a little parole time or something. They were convicted of violating that state's law by simply giving information. And now that's hanging over Ted and Kevin's heads with this Minnesota case. And we've got, we had a hearing on the 17th. It can go on for years. I might be doing this blog until I'm gray. But that's Minnesota, we say, contend, is the only state in America where freedom of speech is not guaranteed, because we are facing legal problems there because of that. And my final slide, to reemphasize what Final Exit Network does. We all know that people sometimes, if you are of means, spend thousands of dollars and fly to Switzerland, where Dignitas for many years will give you the medicine you need to it is self-administered. And you need not be a resident, which is why people go there. We tell everybody that you don't need to go to Switzerland. Final Exit Network you'll have to buy the nitrogen yourself. You'll have to hook it up. You'll have to turn the knob, but we will tell you from A to Z what you need to do, and we will support you in every way we can in helping you learn how to do it and when you do it, if you want our presence. I will give you the information to get a free 1-year membership to Final Exit Network. We'll send that out with other links, and no salesman will call. And what it basically does, it gives you 1 year of free access to our magazine, which I produce. So it's pretty good magazine. And so that's it. And that's kind of brings you a little bit up to date on where we are with the Right to Die since I last spoke to you all. Yeah. And I'll take questions, of course, if anybody has any.
Thank you, Jay. As usual, we'll have our Q&A session soon. Right now is the time when I say our society is an all-volunteer organization and we receive no money from any other organization. We survive due to your commitment to our common goals, that together we can continue to provide a place where ethics and shaping a more caring and thoughtful world is our ultimate concern. So we're going to pass the baskets. And thank you for your donations. They'll be around somewhere. I'll get them soon. Yeah. But right now, we'll have a Q&A time with Jay. And since we're low on microphones, Jay's, no, you're all set. Yeah.
If they're near the next year, here.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and hold my mic near you so when you speak in it, our Zoom people can see. So questions?
Don't put it roughly the mouth, but
I won't. I'll put it the same. Amy, did you have a question? All right.
Jay, thank you for the update. I wonder about the voluntary stopping of eating and drinking technique. A friend of mine used that. He had severe Parkinson's and couldn't swallow, couldn't sleep, and so forth. So he used that technique, but his people close to him came under some criticism for allowing him to do that to himself. So I wonder if you have that experience of voluntary stopping eating and drinking.
That is called, VSED, VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. And it's legal to do because it's not active. And you might know that people sometimes go on hunger strikes. I remember when Dick Draper did it, the comedian, and he's lasted forever, because when you go on a hunger strike, you stop eating most food, but you don't stop taking liquids. And it's the liquids that are really important. And when you do stop eating and drinking voluntarily, if you go overboard with the ice chips to keep your mouth moist, that can make you hang on if you're too much into it. Now, the business about running into opposition from people around you. And this is one thing that is vital about Final Exit Network. If you're going to be accepted into our Exit Guide program to get Exit Guide services and assistance, we make sure, although something went wrong in Minnesota, we make sure that the family is on your side and your intimate friends are on your side. You can't go into this and have Uncle Harry show up from Phoenix by plane and say, no, stop it, Chris, you can't do that. And in this case that you're aware of, maybe the groundwork wasn't done, but it is so vital to have people support you. And Final Exit Network, our attorney, Rob Rivas, our corporate counsel, he and others came up with a new program to develop a special advance directive for dementia care. And if you fill out this customized advance directive, and it says, if I get dementia, I want VSED. And here it is, and it's legal. And what we've done, we've been searching for people to sign up. I don't know how many we have now, but we're hoping to get a test case where if you go into hospice or if you go into a nursing home and that advance directive says, Amy, stop feeding her, stop giving her liquid, and they ignore it, we will go take it to court free of charge. We're looking for a test case to challenge that advance directive if somebody ignores it. And California just updated its law for medical aid in dying. And one of the changes was, Gavin Newsom just signed it a couple months ago, I think, is that now any long-term care facility, be it hospice, nursing home, whatever, must make clear its policy on not only VSED, but also whether or not you can get medical aid in dying, because it's legal in California. Because that's part of the problem. You go into a nursing home and then 2 years later, you say, well, I'm terminally ill, I want to go. And they say, no, we won't do that here. We're here to help people. Or maybe some hospices, because it varies from hospice to hospice. So the business about guilt is very real. And it depends on who's shaming you and who. You've got to get your family members and all your friends and your healthcare providers all on the same page if you can.
I have a comment and then a question, and I won't be too long, I promise. One of the first really complicated patients I ever took care of was an ALS patient. He was incarcerated in the federal prison system. His family dumped him across the border because they couldn't take care of him, and so he was incarcerated. And we took care of him in the prison system. And he asked to die every day. He asked us to stop treating him every day, but because of the way the federal system worked, we were not allowed to not stop treatment. So it did become very hard for the staff because we were like, he's asking us to stop. He does not want to be suctioned. He does not want to have all these things done to him. But he ended up passing away, I think, about a year after being incarcerated. So I'm very familiar with, wanting people having the right to die. I wanted to ask any other thoughts about folks who have other types of chronic disease. I call out diabetes because I have had several patients who I say are dying very slowly from diabetes because they refuse to take their medicine. They refuse to engage in treatment. They end up getting amputations, starts with the toe, ends up with the whole leg. They end up getting septic, and then they pass away. Patients do say often that they don't want to deal with the insulin. They don't want to deal with the doctors. But when we approach them with hospice, we're looked at as if we're crazy. What are you talking about? They just have diabetes. So I didn't know if you had any other thoughts on other chronic illnesses as well.
I think the question is, about some chronic illnesses that maybe weren't on that list that would qualify a person for medical aid in dying. It wouldn't, not medical aid in dying, not where it's legal, because you got to have that 6-month bar, but it might work for Final Exit Network. And I think that's a question I should maybe put to some of my friends on the board and say, hey, what about diabetes when it goes astray and leads to terrible outcomes? I'll ask Lowry Brown, who runs our Exit Guide program. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it.
John? I was just curious, is Fran Schindler still involved with Final Exit Network?
It's interesting. No, she's not formally Fran Schindler from Chapel Hill, whom I think has spoken to this group maybe, and many of you know her. She is not formally involved with Final Exit Network anymore, but my understanding is that she still does what she did for many years in helping people who are terminal. And that's all I'll say about that, without divulging anything more than that. But she's still active, and I got to meet her on one of our wink, wink trips to Asheville to talk to Don. So yeah, she's still here, and she's still a spark plug, and she's great. But she's not formally with Final Exit Network anymore.
Gordon?
So is this is not working, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. First of all, I appreciate your excellent speaking voice. And my point is to avoid involving other people in this. Just do it yourself. And I have a way of doing this, and it involves 3 items. First of all, you must need a background of privacy. Then all you need is a hammer, necktie, plastic bag, 3 things. And you don't need to involve other people. So the legality issue is not involved when there's no other people there, because you will be dead and they can't charge you when you're dead.
Well,
And if there's any question about how this is done, it's plastic bag, necktie, and hammer. The hammer puts you unconscious so that you don't fight the plastic bag. And that's all there is to it.
well,
But you need privacy as a background.
that if you want to avoid legal problems, suicide is legal, completely legal in every state. I think it was in the early 70s. It might have even been North Carolina, one of the last ones to decriminalize it. There is no problem with taking your own life in any way, shape, or form that you wish. But the problem arises when you have to resort to terrible do-it-yourself methods, and our magazine has run more than one story on murder-suicide by a couple that's been together 40, 50, or 55 years, and they're both dying, and they arrange everything and do it themselves, usually with a gun. That's not a dignified way to go. You should be, it always happens in a state where they don't have the option of medical aid in dying. The last story we did was on a couple that died together in Wisconsin. So there are ways you can do it yourself, but you shouldn't have to resort to that. That's what we say in the Right to Die movement. We should be more humane and compassionate than that. Compassionate.
Dorothy?
So I have one horror story, I guess I will relate. Many years ago, an administrative assistant in our office was struggling with an older sister or a younger sister who was, she had a lot of mental health issues. And she wound up planning to take her own life, but she botched it. And she drank antifreeze and survived, but wound up with, I think, kidney failure. And they had a tumultuous relationship. So the woman I knew actually would have nothing to do with her. She became a ward of the state of New York. Apparently, in either a nursing home or a hospital for the rest of her life. I don't know whatever happened, but it was a lesson to me. If you're going to do this, don't botch it, because her life, her quality of life would be awful.
Yeah, there are horror stories of botched attempted suicides, or even, people who are terminally ill, not to mention just normal suicides as well. I was going to mention one other thing briefly. I'll take a minute that I meant to mention during my presentation. This notion that right to die laws discriminate against disabled people. And that's what the critics in that did yet say, oh no, you're targeting us, it's discriminatory. Well, Catherine Tucker, one of the foremost legal minds in the end of life arena, she and some other crack advocates have filed a lawsuit against the California right to die law. And it says that the law discriminates against disabled people. And that's exactly what Not Dead Yet says. But they're from opposite poles. The lawsuit filed by Tucker and some physicians and right to die advocates says, look, if a healthy person has the ability to take these meds and end their life because they're dying anyway, but somebody who doesn't have the physical ability to take it, that's discriminating against them. Somebody with ALS or somebody who can't swallow. And so we need to change the law so it does not discriminate against disabled people. And of course, Not Dead Yet, they fired back a press release with 25 organizations for supposedly representing disabled people saying, no, this is wrong. This lawsuit is misplaced. We can't have this. It doesn't discriminate. Well, it absolutely discriminates against you. If you're physically unable to take the medication, you're shit out of luck. And so it's interesting that this lawsuit has been filed, and where it will go, I don't know, but it flies directly in the face of what the Not Dead Yet people are saying.
Jay, do you have any numbers in terms of how many people are helped in a year or period of time?
Each state provides its own report. And I'd have to look up nationally what it is. It's always a small percentage of people who die. And in every state, cancer is almost always by far the most common malady that people have. And I can say this, typically, wherever medical aid in dying is available, about 1/3 of the people who are approved and receive the medications never use it. And the analogy I use is, I'm sure I said this 2 years ago, it's like a life insurance policy. You don't want to use it, you don't like to think of yourself dying, but it's nice to know you got it. And when you get those meds and they sit in your bathroom, you may never use them, but you sure feel a lot better that the option's there. And I'll tell you what, I'll look it up, and when we send out an email to everybody with links and stuff, I'll put a figure in there.
Yeah, that was going to be my second question, because I think I remembered statistics from Oregon that said pretty much the same thing, that with the availability of it, the actual usage was only a fraction of those who applied.
And I think even in the most populous state like California, it's probably 1,000 or 2,000 a year of people who get aid in dying and actually use it. It's not a lot of people nationwide, but I'll find out.
We have any more questions? Thank you again, Jay.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
For updating us on this subject. I mean, it's good to see that there's progress being made, however slowly. Well, we're coming to the end of our meeting. Are there any announcements today?
Sorry, I guess I have to stand next to you. You're wired. Okay. So during the pandemic, we collected change for the gosh darn it, I knew I was going to forget it. The organization that helps no, that's for next time. It's the organization that helps formerly incarcerated people get back into the society. Second Chance used to be their name, but it's something else now. Community Support Initiative. Thank you. And we had made a decision a while back that we round up the donation to $100. And so anyway, that's been done. Nobody sent me any suggestions for the next charity, so I chose Rise Against Hunger just because we've worked with them before and seemed like a good choice. So the Change for Change jar is back, and we're going to go to quarterly collections. In this particular collection, we're going to go all the way to March because it's the end of November. So please give spare change and small bills.
Thank you. John?
I want to talk about next Sunday's talk. I had volunteered to give a talk on a book that Gretchen kindly lent me. It's by Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner, and two other authors. It's entitled Noise, and it's about noise in decisions and judgments. How to try to eliminate noise and improve judgments and decision making. And it's a very interesting book, and there's some good information in it that I'm going to pass on next Sunday. Okay.
Anyone else? Yeah,
It's in person.
yeah, next Sunday is an in-person meeting. As you all know by now, Ralph has moved and almost done with clearing out his house to go for sale. And I brought over a few books that may be of interest to people, books on humanism and philosophy. There's actually a final exit book there and another one on dying, for a more lighthearted giveaway. There's all the CDs that he had, a lot of classical music as well as others. So everything is, yeah, everything is being given away. Most everything, there was an estate sale and things that are left are being donated or given away, and we're pretty much down to the end of it. So it would be a help for the environment and everybody else if you would pass some of this stuff on. So thank you for that. Any other announcements? But we guess we don't have closing words, so I'll just wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. And if you're sharing it with friends and family, I hope you enjoy it and have a little fun and holiday cheer at this time. So I thank Dorothy for being our greeter today. And I'm not sure who's board member in charge because I have a Tish written down. So I guess we're on our own, folks. Our meeting is over, but our fellowship continues. And give someone next to you a warm greeting and a handshake. Well, we can't do handshakes. I really have to update this elbow bump and all that stuff. And thank you for being here today and hope to see you next week.